Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our reading of Sacred and Terrible Air, written by Robert Kurvitz and translated by Group Ibex. Today we are jumping in at the very end of the book. This is the final chapter of the book. However, I will be reading an epilogue, an additional chapter written by Robert and posted some years after the book was published. So this chapter, chapter 19, is the final original chapter, and chapter 20 is an epilogue of sorts. So, here we go. 19. I am no joke. 46 hours later, and 60 floors below, the hotel lobby is empty at night, and it shines like a tomb of black marble. At the reception desk, the girl is anxiously listening to the radio about how Mesk's nuclear cruisers are spying from within the far pale, while industrial espionage lurks right here. They are everywhere. The war news is still echoing from the hall when a man in a windbreaker comes through the automatic doors. A storm cloud accompanies him as he rushes in. In the background run the glowing white letters, Hotel Intergrad. The girl doesn't notice him, and the security guard is also transfixed with fear, so the guest walks right past them, into the resident's private elevator. The doors close behind him. Alone in the golden light of the elevator, he flips his backpack over to his chest, the loops still on his shoulders, like he was taught in 6th grade. Do it like that, Con. It's totally spiffing like that. Con searches for something in the side pocket of his bag. A bunch of keys come into view with a jingling of metal. Among them hangs the key to the lock of his wooden house in Salem, the jagged hammer for the hallway, and the aluminum mass to lock himself in the basement. All of them useless. Scrap metal. All but one, a golden key, the bitting of which seems to be sophisticated and high-tech, as if turning such keys simultaneously would trigger a self-destruct protocol, a dead-hand type perimeter defense, an attack guaranteed even in the event of the High Command's demise in a preemptive nuclear strike. Khan inserts his doomsday key into the keyhole and turns as instructed. Left twice, then right, then left again. Embart Sumyan, Saryan Asatorovich is engraved on the copper plate below the keyhole. The hiss of a speaker cuts through the silence of the elevator. Mr. Ambart Sumyan, I was worried. I'm not Mr. Ambart Sumyan. I'm Inayat Khan. The man demonstrates the key, unable to decide where he should point it. He can only see himself in the mirrors, his pom-pom hat askew, and the shoulders of his windbreaker dusted with melting snow. He's unshaven. He looks terrible. I was given this for emergency situations. What's going on now? Why don't you answer my calls? You talk like Ismael. Sorry, what? You talk like Ismael. Oh, do you remember Ismael? I'm Ishmael, replies the faithful secretary, and the elevator jolts into movement. A sense of exhilaration goes through Khan. You were worried. Why? Why didn't you pick up? The secretary hesitates. I haven't been in touch with the gentleman for 2 days. The last instruction was to stop all calls and not let anyone in. And that was the day before yesterday. Yes, when the gentleman received your shipment, Inayat Khan. Acknowledged. Khan nods into the mirror, slush melting on the lenses of his glasses. He takes them off and wipes them on the sleeve of his windbreaker. And nothing else has come, meanwhile, from the ICP. As I said, I haven't heard from the gentleman. Right, yes. The elevator cube slides silently upward towards the sky. Khan's ears want to close up from the pressure change. He swallows, circles the elevator, then stands facing the door, backpack still on his chest. "Mr. Khan," the loudspeaker suddenly crackles. "Yes." "Please check that everything is fine with the gentleman. Tell him I asked to be contacted." "Why wouldn't it be?" The elevator slows down. Khan's arms lift from his sides as if he were weightless. "Why wouldn't everything be fine with the gentleman?" he asks, but the secretary doesn't answer. The elevator doors open in front of Khan. Ping. A beam of light cuts into the dark of the hall on the 60th floor. The wind howls, causing covers to billow around their display cases like ghosts, and the snow blows in. This is how the world's largest private collection of disappearance memorabilia is slowly being buried in mounds of snow. The tapping of shoes on linoleum can be heard. The man from Internal Affairs comes down the hospital corridor at night, a briefcase phone dangling from his hand, locked to his wrist with a chain. A tiny forget-me-not shines on his lapel, a light blue enamel badge. 2 policemen guard the doors of the intensive care unit. One is asleep. "Why are you asleep?" The Internal Affairs agent leans over him. "I'm a MESC infiltrator, and there's a 5-kiloton explosive in this suitcase." The officer opens his eyes and rubs them in bewilderment. His partner looks on in horror. "In the form of Mirova Central Hospital, we have just lost an irreplaceable strategic resource. 3,000 citizens of Grad have perished because you didn't do your job." The officer jumps to his feet and puffs up his chest, his expression still confused with sleep. The man from Internal Affairs is unrelenting. "What are you standing here for? Does it make any difference if you sleep standing up? Who am I? Where is my proof of employment? Why haven't I presented my guest name tag?" The metal double doors swing shut behind the detective as he walks down the dark hall, and the officers in the corridor breathe a sigh of relief. Cubes separated by plastic curtains pass him on both sides. The last one by the window glows with medical equipment. The man turns on his heel and pulls open the plastic curtains. "Machijek, I need you to call your friends. I need you to ask them to come back, now." There's a morphine drip on the headboard, and in it, the morphine drips. This isn't a good sign. The power should have been shut off a long time ago. The crushed agent looks out the window, where it's snowing heavily. "You have nothing to give me." "I don't have to have anything to give you." "I know your stories." "Not reported. You know nothing about research. You're a Duk Jawa. People like you only haunt." Duk Jawa. They're usually bored citizens who entertain themselves by weaving webs of lies against all the types of ghosts and specters that hover through the state apparatus. "People like us, Machijek. People like us are agents of the Collaboration Police. The purpose of Collaboration Police is not to investigate. The purpose of the Collaboration Police is the continuation of the world in its current form." Machijek turns his gaze away from the window. "This world of yours in its current form is one hell of a shithole." "Wow!" The man from Internal Affairs feigns surprise. "Such philosophy. So you like Sanmiro's plan for humanity?" "The only nihilist here is you, Duch. So you don't like Sanmiro and his plan for humanity." The man's features sharpen as he walks closer to the bed, into the green glow of the heart monitor. "But even more abnormal stuff suits you. Or do you not know what company your friend keeps? Your abnormal friend." "I didn't know either." "What is their hobby? What do they do?" Machijek sits up, the bandage on his shoulder staining red with his defiance. "You mean Khan? Khan is a genius. You can't stop him." "Yes." The man from Internal Affairs shrugs. "He knows what he's doing. Unlike you. I would call and ask him to come back now." This concession is enough for the likes of Machijek. "I think that's a no, old man. Stop asking." "Better turn the morph up. I can't reach it." He sinks into the hospital pillow. Luckily, the spasms of his laughter hurt him, and he can't revel in the moment anymore. I think you've had enough drugs. Drugs, mocks Machajek. The internal affairs agent looks at him with disdain. Below him in the hospital bed lays the sweaty body of a man, his bare upper body bleeding, exuding sweat. So you like it here, yes. Are you satisfied with your lot, Konchalovsky? Therese floats in the morphine solution. Dark waves wash over him. Flakes of snow fall into the water. He burns cold. A chance. A child's hands keep him afloat by the shoulders. Tiny, strong hands. He's a soldier of love. Yes, he replies, and watches the green dot bounce on the heart monitor. Calmingly, rhythmically. It's okay here. They say I won't be able to walk normally anymore. But you know what? I wasn't planning on going anywhere. I hate this country. I hate Grad. I hate the collaboration police and the moral intern too. It's only a tool for me. I myself am only a tool. I do know why I'm here. Who turned me in? Don't waste your breath, I'm not an idiot. I know that my work is done. The light green line is left behind in the dark. What did he get for me? Khan, what did you give him? The wind howls, and the sneakers leave prints in the deep snow on the top floor. The world's leading expert on evaporation treads carefully, snowflakes dancing in and out of focus, and there beyond them, his diamaterialist glasses. Sharp, dark eyes watching, flakes sticking to his lenses. The man crouches slowly, his windbreaker rustling. He reaches out and picks something up from a mound of snow. The wind dies down. The display covers droop lifelessly. The dark fabric takes the form of display cases again, and Inayat Khan is there in the midst of them, on one knee, holding a human skull. He looks deep into the blackness of its eye sockets. 60,000 real, dropped, far from here, in the desert of Urg, where the hero of the epic went to ask God for an audience. 60,000 deep holes have been dug, in vain. Khan blows, and snow flies from Ramut Karzai's eyes, his chin clamped shut and his mouth mute, spear broken, flag cloth for a funeral shroud. Mr. Ambart Sumyan. Khan rises. A flag worn by time ripples on the wall, pulled taut with ropes. It's immense, in the colors of the Ilmarin tricolor. A gust of wind kicks up, and a scarf of the same colors flutters around the man's neck. A hat of the same colors is on his head. Ambart Sumyan. Khan goes along, running his hand over the glass cases. The splintered shaft of a spear and an antique rusted spearhead peek out from under the snow. We have to talk. The ominous shadow of the pom-pom hat shifts to the desk, where papers are flying about, and a step pyramid phone is buried in the snow. The hand in the elongated shadow of the elevator beam suddenly twitches like an aberration. There's a grunt of strain, and then, whoa! The skull shatters into 1,000 pieces against the speakerphone. Where are my things? Where are they? The man approaches, tipping over display cases on the way. Display glass shatters. I don't like it when my things are lost. I don't like it one bit. He stops, 2 hands on the mahogany, and in one fell swoop he wipes the table clean of paper and stationery. How am I supposed to know where you put it now? He stares all around the room. Didn't we have a talk about this? Wasn't there a talk? You get the ship, you mediate, everyone gets their things. Where are my things? He shouts. Out of the corner of his eye, he briefly catches sight of a row of floor-to-ceiling windows. The middle one, the largest of the windows, is shattered from the inside. The triangular shards of glass point outward, and snow is blowing in, along with glowing golden Mirova light. In front of the window, in a big pile of snow, gleams an upended display case. Bare wires. A switch. Khan turns his head and erupts from the spot, leaving a paper painting behind him on the end wall, above the desk. Snow-damp paper waves there in the wind. A watercolor Gonju gradually bleeds across the material. The black of the dragon's whiskers sends jellyfish-like tentacles into the rib sails. The reed armor turns into a rainbow. Soon he will be gone. But you can still see how Gonju distributes peaches of immortality to his men. One for you, and one for you. But Khan has no eyes for that. He digs, the wind whistling in his ears. He's got his mittens on. The display case emerges from the snow, and the man turns it right side up, pulls papers out of it, expensive papers, a folder with a collaboration police pennant, an X-ray of someone's exposed teeth. An ID photo flies from the folder into the wind, a bluish tattoo, an impossible reminder on knuckles. 5, 12, 13, 14. Khan catches the photo and stuffs it in the backpack on his chest, along with the others, with false passage papers from the People's Republic to Kukushkina, Grad's Samarran Oblast. These papers sit on top of the stuff in his backpack, with the upside-down pentagon printed on the white passport cover. At the bottom of the display case shines the grand prize, Rodionov's Trench. Khan's mouth drops open. He reaches out. The perforated, dark blue metal sheet sings like a saw blade between his fingers, the light of the city shining through the thousands of specks. Alongside the dots runs the legend of the map. In Voronikin's handwriting, he reads, and the starry sky shines on his tan face. Machajek smiles sadly. Was it good? The man from Internal Affairs doesn't answer, opening his suitcase phone on Teresa's knees. The lights come on inside, and his own dove emblem notebook slides off the keys, the photo paper occasionally glinting. Strange. It had to be something very good. The man thinks for a moment. Now you have a citizen of Vasa whose comings and goings you cannot control. Is that right? You can't do anything to him. He's a collaborator, but he outplayed you. You didn't even know what things you gave him. They were not good, Machajek, shouts the Internal Affairs agent. I was wrong. I was more wrong than you think. And you won't like it. Your own suspect is the victim. He picks up the notebook. What do you think about why your cases haven't been reported? You saw them, Machajek. Let's talk about that. Or do you not want to anymore? You don't want to talk about Dirk Trendmuller? It's not funny anymore, is it? The internal investigator puts his hand on the man's blistering hot forehead. These things happened. You saw them with your own eyes. And now they haven't happened. How is that possible? Those things have nothing to do with this, Therese gasps, his pupils covering his hazel irises. You said so yourself. Only Khan's plan matters now. Khan's plan is the height of abnormality. Rodionov's Trench, mentally ill communists for fuck's sake poking around, and all of you live in that kind of world. You think about those things. You work for them. You like all kinds of objects, yes? I have one too. It reached me today from Vasa. I had it resent to me by telefax 5 times. The man shakes his head angrily. It was always the same. It was always just the same. Let me show you a photo, Machajek, because otherwise you won't behave like an adult, and you apparently don't care about your friends either, after your great sacrifice. He takes the photo paper from the notebook. This here is the only one of Dirk Trentmuller's assets that corroborates your story. He developed it himself in his lab. You saw it too, with your machine. The date of development is August 29 of 52. 2 days later, he sent this along with a negative to the Vassen Photo Lab. The negative is not corrupted. The developed picture is the same. A month later, upon a follow-up request, the Central Photo Laboratory confirms. The negative is not corrupted. The developed picture is the same. Zool confirms that there are no defects in the lens, and Trigat takes 300 test shots with the camera equipment. There are no deviations. This man studied this device for 6 years, until his memory started fading. I think he would have studied it for a lifetime, like you. Therese holds the photo paper with its ragged edges, the date and stamps on the back, August 29 of 52. Turn it around. His sweat leaves a stain on the paper. Photo lab stamps. Zool. Trigat. You don't dare to look at it, do you? You shouldn't be able to dare. No one should. No one should deal with something like this. They must be forgotten. But Machijek, I'm sorry. I need you to call your friends back here. You have to do it. The light slides over the surface of the glossy photo when Therese turns it over. There is a faded summer day, frozen in place. The rain is falling on the cliff, and in front of the rosebush stand the three of them, young, with triumphant smiles on their faces. Khan explains about peaches and Ganju, and he and Jesper look ahead with a beach umbrella in hand. 3 boys hold a beach umbrella over nothing. What is this? The dot on the heart monitor freezes. This is where you and your friends are going. This is your Rodianov's trench. You've retouched it. Therese turns the paper over, panicking, as if he's searching for them on the flip side. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me? We don't do anything. There are no Duxias and Jawas, you junkie. We are friends of mankind. When will you understand? It's not a person that retouched it. You just won't want to think about it. None of you want to. And that's how it should be. Let's leave it at that. The man from Internal Affairs picks up the receiver and presses the redial key. The dial tone plays. Therese turns his head away, but the internal investigator takes him by the chin. Don't stop now. You haven't only done bad things. You fixed them both, Heerd and Trentmuller. You removed that horror from their heads. We're almost there. A woman's voice comes from the receiver. Hotel Intergrad. The photo slips from Therese's fingers. But that's not possible. That is indeed not possible, sighs the Angel of Death. Only the world in its current state is possible. We don't investigate those things. We don't prod at them. We come to terms. We forget. We wait. And we are protected. Hotel Intergrad, how may I help? Please connect me to suite number 4001. Ishmael, do you hear me? Khan's voice echoes over the switchboard. The faithful secretary stands in front of a mess of cables, thousands of metal plugs running into analog sockets. Lights flash. He has a pink shirt peeking out of his jacket collar. With a click-clack, the young man switches the wires on the table with proficiency. I'm listening. The gentleman has jumped to his death. I hope you understand that I didn't have to tell you. I could have just left the building. I hope you understand, and call the authorities only after 10 minutes have passed. The gentleman would have wanted it to be that way, so that I wouldn't be stopped, so that the investigation wouldn't waste my time. So decrees Khan, the wind howling in the background. Time that I don't have. Can you understand me? Say that you understand, and that you'll do as I asked. From behind the speaker, there is an intermittent rumble, like crying. Do you understand? He repeats. and the speakerphone hisses, 10 minutes. Very well. Khan turns his head and looks down. The expanse shines beneath his feet. A man who was afraid that the world was disappearing threw himself out there. But for a while now, Khan hasn't feared anything anymore. New lays before him, and thoughts run deep behind his glasses and eyelids. Organized. Strategic. It's a massive rescue operation, and he's made entirely out of it now, with no other thoughts left. They still call him Khan, but in fact, he is a tactical guide perfected through 20 years of trench warfare, an adaptive maneuver, the author and executor of which is himself, the tyrant of love, a total worldview in the service of a single person. There are others, but he can't be stopped. Horrors visit him. Lately, he can't even recall their names. He gets their ages mixed up. His companion looks at him before he falls asleep. A vague shape from oblivion instead of a face. A minimature of horrors. And even uglier are the nightly long-distance calls from the trench. You know who I am, fat man. I'm not your plaything. Leave us be. How he cried when he woke up. But it doesn't happen anymore. Countermeasures have gone into effect. He knows what happened, and he will remember forever. So stands the man at the broken window of the building's 60th floor, a turquoise orange-violet shroud fluttering from his shoulders. He is a superhero. Girls, he is coming to save you. He walks with his overfilled backpack across the snow-covered floor, down the fire escape stairs. And there, he exchanges the residence private elevator for the guests. He descends 19 floors with a vespertine businessman and his escorts, conjures a smile, then steps out onto the 40th and wipes it from his face. Half an hour before the electrician has broken into the elevator doors downstairs, and 45 minutes before Khan steps out of the parking lot and onto the snowy street, he enters the suite booked under his friend's name, without taking off his shoes. It's dark in the hallway. Khan doesn't turn on the lights. He knows what this means. 3,000 real worth of worn, smooth, suede shoes huddle on the shoe rack. A beige Perseus black peacoat splattered with blood hangs on the coat rack. It's become too morbid for Jesper. The phone rings in the empty rooms. The man follows it into the bedroom, where the bed is made. The air is fresh, and on a cubical white table in the middle of the room sits a dark step pyramid. It's built from stacks of jet-black cash. Khan unpacks the backpack on his stomach, moves the shroud to the sports bag, and starts to load the stacks of money into his rucksack, accompanied by a cold ringing. 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 real, 800,000 real. Teresa's service weapon rests beneath it all, as if in a tomb. The nickel shines in the dim light. He puts it on top of everything else in the backpack, then gets up. Khan looks at the phone on the empty table. The red light blinks on and off, along with the ringtone. It stops for a moment. Half a minute passes, and then it starts again. The man puts his hand on the receiver, thinks. His fingers get sweaty. He picks up the receiver and places it back on the hook. Then he picks it up again, this time placing it against his ear. Dark yellow fingers move on the buttons. When the series of 16 digits is finished, there is silence from the receiver. Then an intermittent dial tone, a signal to another world. And when the receiver is finally lifted on the other side, the pale fills the entire room. Connection. Like a distant ocean. The voice is barely audible in the breaking of the waves. Hello? Mom, I'm not coming home anymore. Two months later, 4,000 kilometers to the north, on the other side of the Yucatan Reserve. The former taiga of northeastern Grad stretches to the curve of the horizon, silver glowing pale in the immeasurable distance. An 800 million hectare sea of trees waves in the wind in front of him. The world. The snow-speckled expanse breathes oxygen into the winter evening atmosphere. Even the indigenous people are forbidden to go here. All of Grad breathes these icy cubic tons. They are its lungs. Grad's lungs. Hydro-meteorological reserve. Oxygen park. A storm-gray motor carriage stands on the forest road, at the edge of a large field, the cabin lights dimming inside as the lead-acid battery slowly discharges. The glass domes of the headlights fade into the twilight of late December. A pump cord winds out of the machine's oil tank. A 34-year-old man holds an empty canister in his hand. The snow-white interior in front of him smells of fuel. The white seats drip with it, as do steering levers, and the armature made of white leather. He strikes a match. It goes out between his cold red fingers as the wind blows around him. The man hides the box with his palm and strikes another one. The first one does nothing. After one more, the motor carriage bursts into flames. A single candle flares to life in the midst of a dimming world. The white skin crackles black as it burns. Charcoal flakes peel and rise up. A white suitcase lights up in the back seat. There, his passport curls up like a dying spider, the covers whistling. The light ash of Malin's letters floats into the air, along with all the rest of the memorabilia that hasn't disappeared anywhere else yet. The drawing lights up before his eyes. The birthmarks on Annie's back disappear. The heat washes over the man's face. He closes his eyes. The specks dance there for a moment, and the pair of eyes, the exact color of which he's no longer sure of, a face that no longer comes to mind. One kiss with the teacher's daughter in the twilight of the forest, which his tongue cannot remember, but without which he himself would be unthinkable. It all fades. The former interior designer pulls back his lips, rubs his bleeding gums with powder, and throws the rest of the nose candy into the burning motor car. It sparkles when it catches fire. Then he picks up speed and leaps across the iced-over stream. Below, a tuft of reeds sticks out of the ice, behind which a forest road meanders. In front of him lies a meadow of fumitories. It snows above the meadow, and the sawtooth-like wall of spruces behind it, a zigzag dream. Bands of snow drift from tree branches into the wind, like wedding ribbons. He goes, a lock of blonde hair fluttering on his forehead, his eyes bright blue and damp from the wind. He wears a snow-white peacoat for this occasion, and he has shoes of white chamois on his feet. The corners of his coat collar have silver anchors, a nautical motif. His silhouette glows in the dim light, slender as a surfboard, water bottles clinking in his messenger bag. No one knows where he's going. No one knows where he is. A tiny shining dot in a wide field of frost. And on the other side of the field, the forest border is waiting. The twilight under the trees is filled to the brim with oxygen. It has invited all conscious life inside. He enters. The carpet of tree needles is springy under his feet. The wind dies down, and no bells ring there. No one's voice. It's better this way. It's right this way. A charred motor carriage is left behind on the roadside. A month later, 6,000 kilometers to the south. A metro train whizzes through an underground tunnel. The carriages are empty at night. The steel whines. Khan leans against the door, backpack on his back. He looks down at the line of carriages twisting in the bend, the steel stomach of the metro. Only a few people sit there, under the lights turned to economy mode. The nation of Grad is at war, and going out at night without a special permit is prohibited. One night, when the officers came to beat him with rubber batons at the train station, Khan bought one for himself. Now he sleeps on station benches and at the tables of all-night cafes and avoids hotels. People have a habit of getting lost there. The yellow light of industry pours in, window after window, as the metro train exits the tunnel and climbs up onto a bridge. Down below runs the blackened undercurrent of Paramania Vera, with a rainbow-colored layer floating on top. Ahead, on the banks of the river, rise the giant cylinders of gas storage tanks, the rows of floodlights for the cucumber plantation, and there, the hydroelectric plant. This is Polyfabricate, Tyrannopole, the stage of human development after the metropolis, the penultimate type of development. The part that Khan had visited once before was Lenka, the capital of Zhimsk. František the Brave was born there, and Therese Matijek too. But by then, Lenka had already been swallowed up by the tumor for some time. Gradian researchers predict that within the next 10 years, the Polyfabricate will grow and merge with Mirova and its suburbs to form the last stage of the development of human settlement, the uninhabitable part of the geosphere, the zone of ecological disaster, the necropolis. It won't get to that. Long before that happens, the Pale will have wiped out this part of the country. On the horizon, above the bay, the black hulls of Gradian cruisers drift to the northwest, swarms of destroyers spilling from their bellies like spores. These are the reserve forces. Tonight, Mesk's fleet had invaded the Grad Isla, the home Isla. There's no good news from Holodnaya, Zemlya Oblast, and Katla either. The castling approaches over the Boreal Plateau. 35 million people are listening to the war news via broadcasting, outside the train window in the Polyfabricate. They are all Kokyos. Only one doesn't listen. He already knows what will happen. This man is a nihilist, and he's the person Khan has followed here. Khan steps out of the door at the stop and zips up his jacket. And the platform is empty and quiet, with the chill of the late southern winter. Poplar trees rustle in the wind. Industrial ash falls from tree branches. The man descends the rattling stairs down to street level and passes between half-dilapidated shacks. The waste disposal facility towers above, an invincible monument. Its silver cylinders gleaming under 5,000-watt floodlights. The street itself is poorly lit. Wooden houses line both sides of the road, and ice crackles underfoot in mud puddles. The road is unpaved. Khan stops in front of a 2-story shack in particularly bad shape. The wooden facade of the building creaks in a gust of wind, threatening to collapse on top of him at any moment. He checks the address written on the back of his hand with a pen, then goes up the stairs, into the cat piss and ammonia-scented darkness of the hallway. A match lights up, and 2 tongues of fire dance in the curve of Khan's lenses as he searches for apartment number 3. There, an old man in his underwear comes to the door, his skin drooping on his chest as if embalmed. Once he had been young and charming with his radical worldview, laughing at everything and everyone, and calmly accepting the little things that would derail an ordinary person. That sort of clowning around, together with the social guilt characteristic of a Nordic woman, earned this Kokyo the best luck of his life, Ziggy's mother. However, the marriage turned out to be a farce for him. Moreover, she didn't allow herself to be disciplined whenever Ziggy's nihilistic father wanted. Ziggy wasn't disciplined by his father. His father cared for him, enough to leave the boy behind in Vasa anyways. And the nihilist, fond of dishing out abuse himself, went back to the Polyfabricate, lifted weights, and kept his health in order to live to be 100 years old. Like a true nihilist, savoring every nasty hour, knowing there are many more to come. All this is clear to Khan. He has it in a folder in his backpack. He wants to know what happened when Ziggy came to his father in Grad, 3 years after the girls disappeared. What had happened between Ziggy and the girls, what he left behind. The Kokyo runt leads him to the kitchen. Between the unwashed dishes, Khan throws a bottle of vodka and 100 real on the oilcloth-covered table. And the Kokyo runt unscrews the cap, a shot glass pinched between his middle and index fingers. It's not that I want to cause any trouble for him with this. Don't get me wrong. Khan looks at the filled glass in front of him. Everything is as I said on the phone, but... He thinks for a moment, and then pours the vodka down his throat. The boy does know who I am. I'm a nihilist. The old man slams his glass on the table too. Behold, the mighty nihilist, as he stands eye to eye with death tonight at 8 o'clock in the community center. Death is great and terrible, but a nihilist isn't what was it now? He puts his finger to his mouth and tries to remember, but the spirit doesn't return. The mood is spoiled, and his body sags from the shoulders. Soon it'll be over. What's the difference now, anyway? The old man nods towards the door. Everything is as he left it. Stacks of notebooks rise like towers against the walls. Khan's silhouette stands in front of the door, between the stacks, the kitchen light shining in from behind him. Then, when he reaches for one of the notebooks, the rest of the stacks start to collapse on top of him. He looks to Ziggy's father for help, his shoulder propping the swaying tower up against the wall. Let it be. Ziggy's father coughs. Everything is the same. All the same story. What do you mean? Khan takes a step back. Graph paper notebooks spill onto the floor. The girl's ages written on each cover in Ziggy's sloppy handwriting. 5, 12, 13, 14. One and the same story, I tell ya. The Kokyo runt turns his back on Khan and sits down at the kitchen table. A weird tale. It's a rather weird tale for all of us. And does it have a happy ending? Now? Khan begins to pack the notebooks into his sports bag. As he stands in front of the door with his bulging bag over his shoulder, the Kokyo runt is still looking out the small window of the kitchen. They want to sink this world into the pail, you know. The masks. They say on the radio that the mangers are coming. That we all just stand there, mouths agape, and they make sure we don't choke on our own tongues as they feed us. A failure. It's no longer nihilism. It's a farce. I've seen it. It's the protein mass quarantine of Lomonosov's land. It wants to turn the whole world into Lomonosov's land. Khan taps the toe of his shoe on the doormat. Well then, I guess I should head out now. Isn't he a disappointment, this San Miro? But you know, boy. The old man looks at Khan, his eyes shiny with vodka, black as a horse's. I think there's more to come from there. The lights in the carriages go out in front of Khan, one after the other. The tunnel swallows the train. He sits by the window in hollow silence, his ears blocked up by the change in pressure. Green lights mark the exit. Otherwise, the carriages are dark. The steel whines. He takes out a flashlight and fills it with batteries, and the world on the graph paper appears in his lap out of the darkness. Khan sits with the stack of notebooks on his right and reads. Page after page untangles in front of him, in the beams of his flashlight. Every detail is recorded there, with the attention span of an autist, every word and movement documented. It's not so much a story as a technical drawing, an industrial model of a memory. Instructions to the benevolent power of the future that could put Sigismund Berg's lost world back together. Cut, fold, paste. The trajectory of the brick in the winter night, and the coordinates of the living room window. A familiar address, the girl's house in Vasa, at the Falu stop. The suburban maze appears on a fold-out map. The dotted line represents the fleeing boy. And there are meteorological details in the corner of the page. Air pressure and humidity, 18 degrees below freezing. The next night, at Handsome Alexander's, couches against the wall, A 6-phase fight rendered as Dan steps on the floor, and then a great darkness. A single voice ringing above him, above the boy with the zippers on his jacket. "You're Ziggy, the baddest boy in school." Con gets a bad feeling. He wipes his glasses in a handkerchief, and acid swirls in his stomach. This is an impending fit of jealousy. "And you, clever destruction, are the most beautiful girl in school." However, on turning the page, the girl's name, familiar with its circle A in the middle, is not waiting for him. There awaits its absence. He and the world around him are no more. The dates under the pages start from New Year's Eve, once or twice every week, and then less and less as they go, right up until the 28th of August. But the pages themselves are empty. Con grabs the next notebook from the seat and flips through it. Then the next. He pulls the rest of the notebooks out of his backpack, and it's the same story for all of them. A weird tale. The platform light turns the carriages wholly as sieves. It radiates in from the rows of windows, window by window. Con lifts his head and his glasses flash. 2 glowing portholes. The final stop. He doesn't understand. A fat idiot in a light blue cravat. Somewhere out there is Sigismund Berg, who knows that only shells remain of his tail. The magnetic tape hisses. The heart spins alone in the plastic disc, and the numbers, he has them too, inseparable from the world until the end. He catapults toward it through the pale superdeep in his steel apricot pit. Con's own memory, however, is distorting in his head, and the backups have been deleted, one after another, leaving him alone. He can't bear to carry it like this, but he can't live without it. That night, he sleeps in the station's toilet, in a cube with cardboard thin walls. He has curled up against the wall and locked the door. His body is covered by a tricolor shroud, tattered by time. The tassels sweep the floor as the man tosses and turns. He can't sleep. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. Talk about something. You always have such awesome presentations in history and science classes. The man opens his eyes and looks into the expressionless lump of a face. Smooth, blonde hair falling on the tile. The child is resting on the floor, directly opposite him. Doesn't breathe. Doesn't smell. "Where are you?" Low vibration. The invisible companion doesn't respond. Con pulls himself into a ball as tightly as possible, but the cold doesn't leave his body. He repeats, "I am at the end of the world. I am at the end of the world." "21 years ago, little bare feet walk down the stairs of a private house in a suburb. It's the night of the winter solstice, and blood vessels run beneath translucent skin. Each nail is a crimson jewel. Her toes curl against the chill of the steps. Dark green eyes. The hem of her nightgown flutters against her calves in the breeze. This is how Malin Lund steps downstairs onto the carpet. A broken window shines in the dark room. Its curtains swell like a sail. A brick lays on the floor, and the front door stands open. She herself is a mirror, and in her is a perfect copy of the world. But something is wrong. Always has been. Her surface is flawless, pre-teen, sparkling clean. It is the light that's mistaken. It is the world itself. 2 young girls step next to the third in the dark. At the cusp of the oldest one's hand, the fourth, a tiny, good fairy godmother, points towards the window with her wand. The window hangs like a cracked smile on the frames. "Look, look," she says. "It's going wrong." What follows is an epilogue. This epilogue was not printed in the original book, but it was published in 2014 on Zaum's blog. 20. Light shines through everything. Revachol, 75 years ago, 2 years before the turn of the century revolution. From the main hall of the symphony, applause echoes to the back of the stage. The ovations are mediocre for a first performance, and the second encore doesn't happen. The first one was brought on by the clackers. Already, the string section is exchanging their evening gowns for street clothes on silver round-armed sofas. Outside the window, the late January sky is dyed blue, and in front of it stands the Comte Émile de Pérouse-Mitressy in a black redingote, a dodecahedron in his hand, and his finger-waved hair mussed from conducting. Émile is a contradictory character. He is an aristocrat, the Comte de Pérouse and the Comte de Mitressy, but his hatred of the bourgeoisie, which have usurped the upper classes, makes him a proletarian, and therefore a revolutionary. In the course of his life, Émile has also come to think of himself as a composer. He has a morbid thirst for fame, but he is determined to win the hearts of the people with his dodecaphonic works. The Comte's sound is based on a strikingly modern geometric symbolist system of harmonies that has nothing to do with the music of the rest of the civilized world. To the human ear, it sounds like unacceptable screeching. Émile considers the tonal, traditional sonority to be womb-shaped, a soul-soporific babble, the music of amoebas. He conducts his own works, and no one else is able to, or even wants to, using a cardboard dodecahedron instead of the traditional baton. The man's cheeks flush with excitement. The dodecahedron trembles in his hand. "Am I going back or what?" he exclaims. "I am." He storms across the room as if driven by a fever. At the door, the director of the symphony orchestra stops the Comte in his own discreet way. "I don't know. I don't think there's any need to go." "Why?" The man doesn't understand. A virile smile appears on his lips. "But they're calling for me. It was tremendous." "Tremendous." The director scratches his head. "Well, it was something. But you already went out there once, and it's not a good idea to test the politeness of the audience." The hall has quieted down. The wind blows outside the window. "I don't think it was half bad." A fat colleague puts his hand on the Comte's shoulder. "It was a good idea. The execution could have used a little polish, but you know what? By the end, it all came together nicely. So what if it doesn't get a repeat performance? You'll polish the next one to a shine, and then it'll happen." So says the man who mainly writes flute concertos and solo pieces for flutes. "Yeah, the next one." The director is still scratching his head. "Perhaps it would be better if you didn't write about that." The Comte hears him whispering to the critic. "The Pérouse-Mitressys have been generous to our institution over the years." And the excitement on the Comte's face turns into a malignant tremor. His smile is faltering. Unnoticed, he returns to the windowsill, past the bustling women. He can hear the director's damage control speech from there, and the critic is speaking too. Complicated. Apparently, you don't get famous with this sort of thing. Apparently, it's disturbing to listen to. Beyond the glass, in the dark blue evening, tree branches sway. "Disturbing to listen to," whispers the Comte. A metronome stands on the windowsill. He pushes the pendulum to set it ticking. The tempo is grave, at the slowest possible. "You won't get famous." "Well, hold on now," barks the concertmaster. "I think the man has a sound that is completely one of a kind." A plump woman looks towards the Comte. "I sincerely hope there will be a next time, and then maybe it doesn't have to be quite so complicated." There's a roar of laughter. A sigh of relief passes through the dressing room. "By the end, it all came together," the man mumbles. He slowly turns around and looks at the room full of people with a scowl underneath his finger-wave bangs. "So, I'm the only one who thought it was tremendous then. Tick, the metronome replies. Tree branches sway behind the man. I thought it was peculiar, says the concertmaster, and really there were some good moments. Good moments, says the Comte. Tick, says the metronome. The man juggles his dodecahedron in his hand. But then, which moments did you like best? Well, the beginning of the second part was beautiful. The woman picks at her violin case. And tick, tick, tick. Azimuth. Someone claps their hands together in the silence. Tick. Boreas. Sinus. Eyes aglow like lightning, a tiny man strides across the room. At every beat, he claps his hands together, and with every step, says a word. Nadir. The little man finishes and bows to the Comte. Every single part was absolute mathematical perfection. Don't do a next one. Don't ruin it. Disappear. It needs no more. The man clenches his tiny hands into fists, and the elbows of his velvet suit have patches. I'm going back to Grad, he tells the room. In 2 years' time, a revolution will begin in Mirova, sweeping across the land like a thunderstorm, and its failure will usher in the next century, the century of the twilight of the human mind, each succeeding year darker than the last. He creeps around the room like a ball lightning, threatening to pounce on someone's face at any moment. From the end there, through the polar night, that music will resound. It will play on future phonographs, on magnets. Yet it does not come from there. You'll be famous, Monsieur Matresi. Your music will reach us from the very end, even further beyond there, where all matter is but memory. So sounds the white light that shines into every darkness, turning all revelations into nothingness. He rises up on tiptoe, under the critic's nose. All revelations, I said, turn to naught. Tick. The small man turns his head around like an owl. His gaze searches for a lightning rod, and finds it in the form of the Comte. A grin spreads across his face. The Comte gasps. So, I'm still going to become famous? Do you really think that's going to happen? I'm sure of it, because beyond the light... Eon, the child's voice interjects. Eon, let's go already. A little boy dressed in formal wear stands by the door. You have to excuse me. The man squeezes the Comte's hand. It was an honor to meet a man whose head is the receptacle of sounds so bright that in their light the memorial nature of the world becomes visible. Wait, the author winces. He pulls an ordinary pen out from the bottom of the inner breast pocket of his redingote and uses it to autograph the dodecahedron. He's been practicing this for a long time. What name do I make this out to? Ion Rodionov. The man smiles. He's excited. You don't happen to be writing anywhere, do you? Oh, no, I'm not a critic, the man replies, his eyes sparkling with admiration. I'm a maths teacher. Who would have thought? Snaps the puffed-up critic by the door. But the teacher walks past him, paying him no mind. He takes the hand of the little student standing in front of the door. Come on, Ambrosius, he says. Isn't this a beautiful polyhedron? A month later, 800 kilometers from Revachol, at the edge of Insulinde on Les Immensités Bleues. The yacht's sail catches the wind with a vengeance. The canvas flaps, and the howling of the wind is deafening. It's a night at the end of February, during Madrugada, the final dark blue hour before sunrise. The silver ocean lies beneath the dark blue expanse, a lone yacht maneuvering through its cracking ice sheet. An iceberg passes by the railing, steaming in the dark. On deck stands Comte Émile de Pérouse Matresi. He's still in his black redingote, which is unwashed and worn. The man's hair flutters in the wind. His hands are red from the cold. They're frozen to the helm. "Kill yourself, Revishol. Kill yourself," he roars into the wind. "I know that it's tremendous, and the world knows that it's tremendous. Who even are you, anyways?" And the ship crashes into the ice sheet. A deafening screech sounds against the wooden hull. With his teeth, the Comte tugs the cork from a bottle of spirits. "Complicated," he growls and takes a swig. "I bring you the music of the spheres, and it's too complicated. You're complicated, you cow." In front of him, through the vast, ragged world, the sun rises. It is a vision. A bright grey light radiates in wisps, as cold wreaths. The sun rises from the pale. The Comte thrusts his hands towards the sky, and the incomparable noise of time engulfs him. It's louder still than the wind, louder than the masses of ice rubbing against each other. The man's mouth sputters with drool, howling his favorite cadence. It's written by him, and the voice in the pail in front of him sounds like applause, standing ovations, the stamping of tens of thousands of feet, and whistles, deafening whistles like those of fireworks, an atom that will someday be split in Revachol. The only thing in this world more beautiful than his own music is applause. "I'm famous," booms the Comte. "I am the most famous musician of all time. All other musicians are nothing compared to me. Nobody at all knows them, but they all know me." He necks the bottle of spirits and smashes it on the deck. "Millions love me," he exclaims, and deliriously throws his hands in the air towards the pail. "Millions and billions, hundreds of thousands of billions of young girls in love. They love me and my 12-tone melody. Love is everything. Love is light, and past that, nothing."